Hello everyone, and welcome to my General Hospital official channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up.
The Los Angeles air, thick with smog and memory, hit Anna Devane the moment the plane doors hissed open. It was a familiar assault on the senses, a stark contrast to the sterile, recycled atmosphere she had been breathing for hours. Each step through the jet bridge was a study in controlled agony, a sharp, biting pain radiating from her left side with a persistence that was both physical and mental. She moved stiffly, her usually graceful posture compromised, her face a pale mask of exhaustion etched with lines of pain she no longer had the energy to conceal. The vibrant, chaotic energy of LAX, a place she had navigated countless times with purpose and speed, now felt like a hostile maze. Every jostle from a hurried passenger, every blaring airport announcement, was a fresh wave of discomfort. She was home, but she was returning not in triumph, but in retreat, a wounded bird seeking a familiar branch on which to land and, perhaps, to die. The cab ride was a blur of sun-bleached concrete and shimmering heat. She gave the driver the address to her penthouse, then leaned her head against the cool glass of the window, closing her eyes. Behind her lids, however, were not images of the city she loved, but flashes of what had happened. A darkened room. The glint of metal. A face she had once trusted, twisted into something unrecognizable. The betrayal was a deeper, more septic wound than the one in her side. It festered, poisoning her from the inside out. She had managed to contain the physical damage, to patch herself up enough to travel, but the emotional hemorrhage was ongoing, a steady, fatal bleed that only one thing could possibly stanch, the truth. And there was only one person she could trust with it now. Only Jason Morgan. The high-speed elevator to her penthouse felt like a ascent into a silent, sterile tomb. The silence was profound after the cacophony of the airport. She disarmed the security system with a code that felt alien under her trembling fingers and pushed the door open. The place was exactly as she had left it, immaculate, tasteful, and utterly empty. It smelled of citrus cleaner and absence. She dropped her go-bag by the door, the thud it made unnaturally loud in the stillness, and shuffled towards the kitchen. Her first priority was water, then painkillers. The second was to make the call. Every instinct, honed by decades in the field, screamed at her to go to ground, to vanish, to handle this alone as she had handled so many other crises. But this was different. This was a cancer within the very organization she had dedicated her life to, and cutting it out required more than a lone wolf's surgical strike. It required an ally of absolute, unshakable integrity. It required Jason. Her hand was surprisingly steady as she picked up the phone. She didn't call his cell. That could be compromised. She called the landline at his warehouse office, a number known to a very select few. Morgan. His voice was flat, calm, a bedrock of certainty in her suddenly fluid and treacherous world. Jason. It's Anna. Her own voice was hoarse, stripped raw. I'm back. I'm at my place. I need you to come. Now. And, come alone. There was the briefest of pauses, a silence filled with his rapid assessment of the situation. He didn't ask questions. He didn't demand explanations. 15 minutes, was all he said, and the line went dead. The simplicity of his response was a balm. In his world, a call for help was answered. It was that straightforward. Those 15 minutes were an eternity. Anna paced as much as her injury would allow, the plush carpet doing little to muffle the uneven cadence of her steps. She checked the security camera feeds obsessively, her eyes scanning for any sign of a tail, for any unfamiliar vehicle on the street below. Paranoia was a tool of her trade, but this wasn't paranoia. This was a calculated assessment of a clear and present danger. The WSB, her WSB, was no longer a shield. It had become the sword poised above her neck. A soft, coded knock at the door, 2 quick raps, a pause, then a third, jolted her from her thoughts. She looked through the peephole. Jason stood there, his leather jacket a dark slash against the neutral tones of the hallway, his expression unreadable but his presence a solid, reassuring mass. She unlocked the door and let him in. He stepped inside, his sharp blue eyes taking in everything in a single, sweeping glance, the discarded bag, her pallor, the subtle way she favored her left side, the tension that vibrated from her like a tuning fork. He closed and locked the door behind him, engaging the deadbolt and the chain with a quiet finality. "Anna," he said, his voice low. "What happened?" Let me sit down first," she murmured, moving towards the living room and lowering herself gingerly onto the large sofa, a gasp of pain escaping her lips before she could stop it. Jason didn't hover. He went to the kitchen, filled a glass with water, and brought it to her. He stood waiting, patient and silent, a monument of quiet strength. He had seen injury before. He had caused it, he had endured it. He knew its language. She took a long sip, the cool water a minor blessing on her dry throat. Setting the glass down on the coffee table with a hand that now trembled slightly, she finally met his gaze. The professional composure she had worn like armor since the incident finally began to crack, and the raw, unvarnished fear beneath began to show through. "I was in Prague," she began, her voice a low, strained thread. "A standard debrief. Or it was supposed to be. A deep cover agent had been extracted, and I was to be the liaison, the friendly face to help him decompress and debrief before he was relocated." She gave a short, bitter laugh that held no humor. A friendly face. The irony is almost physical. She took another steadying breath, the action clearly painful. The agent was a man named Petrov. Dmitry Petrov. He'd been inside a Russian syndicate for 6 years. His information was considered gold level. He was nervous, jumpy, as they often are. But there was something else, a specific kind of fear. Not just of the people he'd left behind, but of the people he was coming back to. I dismissed it at first. Paranoia is a common side effect of long-term deep cover. Jason listened, his arms crossed over his chest, his posture not aggressive but deeply attentive. He was a man who understood the nuances of threat, the subtle flavors of betrayal. The safe house was compromised, Anna continued, her eyes losing focus, staring at a point on the far wall as she relived the memory. "We were attacked. Not by the Russians. The tactics, the gear, it was all professional. Too professional. It was an internal hit. A clean-up operation." She looked back at Jason, her eyes wide with the fresh horror of the realization. "They weren't there for Petrov, Jason. They were there for me. Petrov was just collateral. A loose end. I was the primary target." Jason's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "Who?" "That's just it," Anna whispered, the words tasting like ash. "I managed to get Petrov and myself out a back exit. It was a firefight. Close quarters. I took a round." Her hand went instinctively to her side. "It's a through and through. I've dealt with it. But as we were running, Petrov was hit. He was bleeding out. We took shelter in a basement, and he knew he wasn't going to make it. He had minutes left. And with his last breaths, he told me why. He told me what he had really uncovered, the information that made him, and anyone he'd spoken to, a target." She leaned forward, the intensity in her gaze pinning Jason in place. "It's not just a few rotten apples, Jason. It's a systemic infection. A faction within the WSB has been completely co-opted. They're not just corrupt, they've been working as a private intelligence and enforcement arm for a consortium. A group of individuals, corporations, governments in the shadows. They call themselves the Chimera. The name hung in the air between them, ugly and mythical. A beast of many parts. Their goal is an intelligence for global security," Anna said, her voice gaining strength, fueled by a furious despair. "It's intelligence for control. For profit. They manipulate markets, orchestrate coups, eliminate political obstacles, all under the official cover and with the vast resources of the WSB. Petrov had gotten his hands on a ledger. Not a digital file, something they could hack and erase. An old-fashioned, physical book. It details their operations, their funding streams, and their agents. The names, Jason. He had the names. She swallowed hard. And that's when he said it. The name that made my blood run colder than the Prague winter. The man who is, for all intents and purposes, running the Chimera's operations within the WSB. The man who gave the order to have me silenced. She looked directly into Jason's eyes, her own filled with a storm of betrayal and terror. It's Caesar, she said, the name dropping like a stone. Caesar Faison. For the first time, Jason's stoic expression shifted. A flicker of pure, undiluted shock. Faison was a ghost, a perennial enemy whose name was synonymous with chaos and cruelty. But he was also supposed to be contained, his influence a thing of the past. To hear that he was not only active but had metastasized inside the very body meant to combat him was a conceptual earthquake. Faison, Jason repeated, the name a low growl. Anna nodded, a single, jerky motion. He's been playing a long game. 4 years. He didn't just infiltrate the WSB, he built his own organization within it. And he's not alone. He has allies. Powerful ones. People here, in Port Charles. This was the final, devastating layer. The threat wasn't an ocean away. It was here. It was now. Petrov died seconds after he told me, Anna said, her shoulders slumping. I barely escaped. I've been moving for days, using every back channel and dead drop I have left that I'm sure is still secure. I came here because you're the only person I know who cannot be bought, who cannot be intimidated, and who understands what it means when the lines between friend and foe completely vanish. She fell silent then, the weight of her revelation pressing down on the quiet room. The hum of the city outside, the distant wail of a siren, all of it seemed to recede, leaving only the stark, terrifying truth she had just laid bare. The World Security Bureau, the institution to which Anna Devane had given her life, her loyalty, and her soul, was not just compromised. It was, in part, being led by one of the most devious and dangerous men ever to cross her path. And he knew she knew. The hunt was no longer in the shadowy back alleys of Europe. It had followed her home. Jason processed the information with the speed and efficiency of a supercomputer, cross-referencing it with everything he knew about Faison, the WSB, and the complex web of power in Port Charles. Anna's injury, her palpable fear, it all made a terrible, logical sense now. This wasn't a spy game. It was a declaration of war from within. What's their endgame? Jason asked, his voice cutting through the heavy silence. Control of the WSB itself? Ultimately, yes, Anna said, rallying slightly. But it's more than that. Port Charles is a nexus, Jason. You know that. The chemical industries, the financial power, the unique elements that this city seems to attract. The Chimera sees it as a testing ground. A place to consolidate power, to eliminate key players, and to implement their models of control on a city-sized scale. With the WSB's resources at their fingertips, they could do it. They could own this city, and then the next, and the next. She looked at him, her eyes pleading not for pity, but for belief. For alliance. Faison knows I have this information. He knows I'll come to you, or to someone like you. He'll be expecting a reaction. He'll have people here. They could be anyone. A nurse at General Hospital, a beat cop, a CEO, anyone. Jason finally moved, walking to the window and looking down at the cityscape. From this height, it looked orderly, a grid of light and motion. But he knew the chaos that simmered just beneath its surface. He had spent his life navigating that chaos. Now, Anna was telling him that the chaos had a new, more intelligent, and infinitely more powerful director. We need to get you to a secure location, Jason said, his tone leaving no room for argument. This penthouse is the first place they'll look. You can't stay here. Where? Anna asked, a fresh wave of exhaustion washing over her. There is no secure anymore, Jason. The WSB's safe houses are a death sentence. My own agency is my enemy. Not my places, Jason stated simply. He turned from the window, his gaze resolute. "We'll take you to one of my properties. Off the books. We'll get a doctor we can trust to look at that wound. Finn, maybe. Or Lucas. Someone outside the usual channels." Anna nodded, the fight draining out of her, replaced by a grim acceptance. She was in his world now. The world of Port Charles's underground, where loyalties were brutal and simple, and the rules were written in blood and code. "Jason," she said softly, as he pulled out his phone to begin making arrangements. "He'll come for me. He'll come for you, for anyone who helps me. Faison doesn't just want me dead. He'll want to make an example. He'll want to break everything I care about first." Jason finished typing a short, encrypted message and looked up, his blue eyes like chips of ice. "Let him try." In those 2 words, Anna heard the declaration. The battle lines were drawn. It was no longer Anna versus a corrupt faction. It was the foundational, unyielding code of Jason Morgan against the shadowy, hydra-headed monster known as the Chimera. Her truth was no longer a burden she carried alone, it was a weapon she had just handed to the one man in Port Charles who knew how to use it without hesitation or mercy. The journey to the safe house was a study in tense, hypervigilant silence. Jason didn't use his usual vehicle. He switched cars twice in a prearranged pattern, his eyes constantly scanning mirrors, his body coiled like a spring. Anna sat in the passenger seat, her head leaning back, trying to regulate her breathing against the throbbing in her side. Every pedestrian, every slowing car, was a potential threat. The familiar streets of Port Charles now felt like a hunting ground, every shadow a possible ambush. The safe house was a modest, unassuming brownstone in a quiet neighborhood, its anonymity its greatest defense. Jason helped her inside, his grip firm and sure. The interior was sparse but clean, stocked with medical supplies, non-perishable food, and an arsenal of communication equipment that was far more sophisticated than anything a normal civilian would possess. He helped her onto a cot set up in a back bedroom. "I've sent for Finn," he said. "He'll be here within the hour. He knows discretion." "Thank you, Jason," Anna said, her voice thick with a gratitude that went beyond words. For believing me. For this." Jason merely nodded. Belief wasn't a question. Anna was family, in the complicated, cobbled-together way that defines so many relationships in Port Charles. Her enemy was his enemy. It was that simple. He left her to rest, retreating to the main room to set up a secure perimeter and begin the monumental task of figuring out how to fight a ghost that wore the face of a global institution. The ledger was the key. Without it, it was her word against Faison's, and Faison had the full weight of the WSB's credibility behind him. With it, they could expose the entire cancerous network. But the ledger was out there, somewhere. And Faison would be hunting for it with every resource at his disposal. The race was on. As Anna drifted into a fitful, pain-filled sleep, the full implications of her confession began to ripple outward, though she couldn't yet feel them. Jason Morgan was now activated. The news she had brought back from Prague was a lit fuse on a powder keg that stretched from the darkest corners of the intelligence world to the very heart of Port Charles. The spoilers for ABC General Hospital were not just about a character's return or a revealed truth, they were the opening moves in a war that would redefine alliances, shatter lives, and test the very concept of safety in a town that had long been a magnet for danger. Anna was injured, but she was home. And she had brought the storm back with her. The shocking truth was out, and now, the real battle was about to begin. Anna Devane's return to Port Charles wasn't supposed to look like this. The sound of the jet's engine roared faintly in her ears as she limped down the small set of stairs, her hand gripping the railing tightly. A deep gash ran along her right arm, hastily bandaged, and the exhaustion on her face told a story that words hadn't yet revealed. Jason Morgan stood waiting near the tarmac, his jaw tight, his eyes darting from the blood seeping through her sleeve to the grim look in her eyes. The last time they'd spoken, she'd been chasing a lead in Los Angeles, something to do with Valentine, something to do with a string of mysterious attacks that had left several WSB agents dead. Jason had tried to convince her not to go alone, but Anna being Anna, she wouldn't have it any other way. Now she was back, broken, bleeding, and clearly carrying a burden far heavier than her physical wounds. Jason stepped forward immediately, catching her arm to steady her as she stumbled slightly. "Anna, what the hell happened?" he demanded, his tone low but filled with concern. "I didn't expect to make it back," she muttered, her voice rough. "But I had to tell you before anyone else finds out." Jason guided her toward the black SUV waiting nearby. She winced as she climbed in, pressing a hand against her ribs. He could see now there were bruises, dark, ugly ones spreading up her side beneath her torn jacket. He grabbed a small first aid kit from the back seat, but she shook her head. "Not now. I'll be fine." Jason frowned. "You're bleeding, Anna. You're not fine." "I've had worse," she said quietly, staring out the window. "We need to talk. What I found out, it changes everything." The weight in her voice silenced him for a moment. He started the car, pulling away from the airport and heading toward her house. The drive was quiet except for her ragged breathing and the faint hum of the engine. Finally, he spoke again. "Start from the beginning. Who did this to you?" She closed her eyes briefly. "It wasn't just one person. Jason, it was an ambush. I was meeting a contact, someone who said they had information on the attack that killed 2 WSB agents last month. When I got there, the whole thing was a setup. They knew exactly where I'd be and when." Jason's grip tightened on the steering wheel. "Someone inside the bureau?" Anna nodded faintly. "Yes. And not just anyone. It's someone high up. Someone with access to all our operations. They're feeding intel to an organization I thought we destroyed years ago." Jason's gaze flicked toward her. "Cassandra Pierce's network?" A bitter laugh escaped her lips. "Worse. Cassandra's people were pawns. The real puppet master has been in the shadows all along." She hesitated, her expression darkening. "And Jason, this person isn't just targeting the WSB anymore. They're targeting you." Jason's eyes narrowed. "Me? Why?" "Because of what you did for Sunny. Because of the people you've crossed. Because someone wants to expose everything connected to the Corinthos organization, and they're willing to burn the entire city down to do it." The car grew silent again. Jason's mind was racing, but he kept his focus on the road. "Who's behind it, Anna? You said you had a name." Anna exhaled shakily, looking out the window. "That's the thing. I didn't believe it at first. I thought it had to be a mistake. But the evidence, it's solid. It's Victor's contingency plan. He may be dead, but he left behind something far more dangerous than we ever imagined." Jason turned sharply, pulling over to the side of the road. "Victor Cassadine is dead. You saw him die." "Yes," she said softly, her eyes haunted. "But he planned for that. Before he died, he created a network, a failsafe, designed to activate if anything happened to him. Files, identities, agents in deep cover, all waiting for one signal. And now, someone's triggered it." Jason leaned back, processing her words. "So you're saying the Cassadines are back in play?" "They never left," she replied. "They just evolved. And they've got people inside the WSB, the PCPD, maybe even the FBI." She turned to face him fully now, her expression grave. "And there's more. The ambush wasn't just to kill me, it was to send a message. They said something before they left me there to die." Jason's jaw clenched. "What did they say?" "They said, 'Tell Jason Morgan his past is about to catch up with him.'" He froze. His past. The phrase echoed in his mind like a gunshot. There were only a few things from his past that could haunt him like that: his time with Sunny, his work for the organization, and the people he thought he'd left behind. Anna watched him closely, reading his expression. "Jason, whatever this is, it's connected to someone you thought was gone. Someone who knows your every move. They used me to get to you. He turned to her, his eyes cold and focused now. Then we're going to find out who it is. And when we do... She shook her head, cutting him off. No. This isn't something you can handle your usual way. If you go after them, you'll be walking right into their trap. They want you to retaliate. They're counting on it. Jason stared at her for a long moment before looking away. He'd spent most of his life living by instinct, reacting, surviving, protecting the people he cared about. But now, the game had changed. When they finally reached her house, Jason helped her inside. She refused to go to the hospital, insisting that every move was being watched. He patched her up as best as he could, his hands surprisingly gentle as he cleaned the blood from her arm. Who else knows? He asked quietly. Just you, she said. I couldn't risk calling anyone else. I don't know who I can trust anymore. Even the bureau's compromised. Jason finished taping the bandage and met her eyes. You trust me. She gave a faint, weary smile. I always have. They sat in silence for a few moments. The clock ticked on the wall, the sound filling the air like a heartbeat. Finally, Anna spoke again, her tone lower now, almost trembling. Jason, there's something else. Something I didn't tell anyone, not even Robert. Jason turned his head slightly. What is it? The person behind the ambush, the one who led the team that attacked me, it was someone I trained. A WSB recruit named Marcus Vale. I thought he was killed years ago during an op in Istanbul. But he's alive, and he's working for Victor's successor. Jason frowned. You're sure it was him? She nodded. He looked right at me. Said my name. He wanted me to see it was him. And he said something else, that he was doing this for the one who saved him. Jason, whoever that person is, they've been planning this for a long time. Jason got up, pacing the room. Who would want to come after both of us? The WSB and me? Anna's gaze hardened. Someone who wants to tear down everything we've built, law enforcement, order, loyalty, everything. They're not after money or power. They're after chaos. Jason stopped pacing and looked at her. Then we stop them before they get any closer. She sighed, exhaustion catching up to her. We'll need help. We can't do this alone. Jason hesitated. Who do you have in mind? Robert, she said. And maybe Dante. But we have to be careful. If even one of them is compromised. He nodded slowly. Then we only tell them what they need to know. As night fell, the two of them sat in the dim light of Anna's living room, the tension thick in the air. She sipped tea, trying to calm the trembling in her hands. Jason stood by the window, scanning the street for any sign of movement. Finally, she broke the silence. Jason, there's one more thing I need to tell you. The information I recovered before the ambush, it wasn't just about Victor's network. There was a list. A list of targets. Jason turned sharply. Targets? Yes. High-profile names. Politicians, law enforcement officers, even civilians. People who've crossed paths with the Cassidines or the Corinthos organization in the past. And your name was at the very top. Jason's eyes darkened. Who else was on it? Carly. Sonny. Dante. Anne. Sam. He tensed. Sam? Anna nodded. She's in danger too. If they can't get to you, they'll go after the people you care about. Jason's voice turned hard. Then I need to get her out of town. Anna grabbed his arm. You can't move too quickly. If they see you act, they'll know you know. You have to be smarter than them, Jason. This isn't a street war. It's espionage, and they've already won half the battle. He met her eyes, steady and determined. Then we'll win the other half. Hours later, when Anna finally drifted to sleep on the couch, Jason stood guard by the window, his mind racing. The city outside looked calm, but he knew the storm was coming. Every shadow, every passing car could be a threat. Anna's words echoed in his head, "Your past is about to catch up with you." When dawn broke, he made a call. "Spinelli, I need everything you can find on a man named Marcus Vale. And check for any unusual WSB transmissions in or out of LA over the last week." Spinelli's voice crackled through the line, instantly concerned. "Jason, you okay?" "I'm fine. Just do it. And keep this quiet." As he hung up, Anna stirred. She looked pale, but her eyes were clearer now. "You're not going to let this go, are you?" Jason shook his head. "Not until I know who's coming for us." Anna gave a small, tired smile. "Then I guess we're in this together." He nodded, his gaze fixed on the sunrise creeping through the window. Together. But even as the light filled the room, Jason knew the truth, this was just the beginning. The Cassadine shadow had returned, and this time, it wasn't just about revenge or power. It was personal. Anna's return to LA had set off a chain reaction that neither of them could stop now. The secrets she carried would force every alliance in Port Charles to shift, every truth to come to light. And as much as he wanted to believe they could contain it, deep down Jason knew, once this truth came out, nothing would ever be the same again.